The descent onto Siler was anything but smooth. Turbulent winds buffeted the shuttle as it broke through the planet's thick atmosphere. Doctor. Elena Reyes gripped the armrest of her seat, her knuckles turning white. She glanced at her team, all seasoned scientists and soldiers, each bracing for the inevitable jolt as they touched down. "We're almost there, folks," Captain Collins announced over the comms, his voice steady despite the rocking craft. "Prepare for landing." Elena took a deep breath, her thoughts racing. This mission was crucial for the survival of the human colonies. Understanding the apex predators of Xylar could mean the difference between peaceful coexistence and constant threat. With a final shudder, the shuttle settled onto the planet's surface. The hatch hissed open, and the team stepped out into the alien landscape. Siler was a world of contrasts, lush, dense jungles interspersed with arid, rocky plains. The air was thick with humidity, carrying unfamiliar scents that hinted at the planet's rich biodiversity. "All right, let's get to work," Elena said, her voice firm with determination. "Sarah, Ravi, Karen, start setting up the base camp. Captain, keep your Marines on alert. We don't know what we're dealing with out here." "Doctor." Sarah Timmons, the team's ecologist, nodded and began organizing the equipment. "This place is incredible," she murmured, eyes wide as she took in the surroundings. "I've never seen anything like it." "Zoologist, Doctor." Ravi Patel crouched down, examining the soil. "And we're here to study the most dangerous creatures on this planet." "Exciting, isn't it?" Elena couldn't help but smile at Ravi's enthusiasm. "Just remember, we're here to observe and understand, not to provoke." Hours later, with the camp established, the team ventured into the jungle for their first expedition. The dense foliage and the cacophony of alien wildlife created an almost oppressive atmosphere. Elena kept her senses alert, every rustle and shadow heightening her awareness. Suddenly, a soft, pained whimper caught their attention. "Doctor." Karen White, the medical expert, motioned for silence. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Elena nodded and gestured for the team to follow. Carefully, they pushed through the thick underbrush until they came upon a small clearing. There, lying amidst the ferns, was a cub of the apex predators, its sleek black fur matted with blood. "Captain, keep watch," Elena ordered. She knelt beside the cub, her heart racing. The creature was larger than she had expected, even as a cub. Its eyes, a piercing blue, locked onto hers with a mixture of fear and defiance. "Elena, we need to be careful," Sarah warned. "The rest of the pack might be nearby." "I know," Elena replied, her voice softening as she reached out a hand. The cub growled weakly, its body tensing in pain. "Easy there, little one. We're here to help." Karen quickly assessed the injuries. "He's in bad shape, but we can save him if we act fast." "Are you sure about this?" Captain Collins asked, his expression one of concern. "Bringing an apex predator cub back to our base could be dangerous." "We have to try," Elena said firmly. "If we can save him, it might help us understand these creatures better. And who knows, it could be the key to forming some kind of understanding with them." With careful hands, the team lifted the injured cub onto a stretcher and began the trek back to their base. Every step was fraught with tension, the jungle around them feeling more alive and watchful than ever. As they reached the safety of their camp, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that their actions today would have far-reaching consequences. She glanced at Kiro, the name she had decided to give the cub, and hoped that this decision would lead to something positive. "We'll do our best for you, Kiro," she whispered, as the team began to treat his wounds. The journey ahead was uncertain, but Elena knew one thing for sure: their mission had just become even more complex and dangerous. "Doctor." Karen White worked meticulously, cleaning and bandaging Kiro's wounds under the sterile lights of their makeshift medical bay. The apex predator cub growled weakly, but there was no fight left in him. His energy was spent. "He's going to be okay, right, Doctor?" Ravi Patel asked, peering over Karen's shoulder. His eyes were filled with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Karen nodded, wiping the sweat from her brow. "He's stable for now, but we need to monitor him closely. The real challenge will be earning his trust." Elena stood nearby, watching intently. "Sarah, what do you think? Any chance we can get through to him?" Sarah Timmons, who had been studying Kiro's behavior since they found him, sighed. "It's going to take time. Apex predators are intelligent, but they're also fiercely independent and wary of outsiders. We have to be patient. Captain Collins, leaning against the wall with arms crossed, chimed in. Patience we have, but what about safety? If this little guy doesn't warm up to us, we could have a big problem on our hands. Elena approached Kiro slowly, crouching down to his level. Hey there, Kiro, she said softly. The cub's eyes followed her movements, his ears twitching at the sound of her voice. We're not going to hurt you. We just want to help. Kiro growled lowly, baring his teeth for a moment before relaxing slightly. He seemed to sense that they were not a threat, but trust was still a long way off. Over the next few days, the team took turns caring for Kiro. They fed him, talked to him, and maintained a calm, consistent presence. Ravi spent hours observing him, noting every detail in his journal. He's definitely more alert today, Ravi remarked one morning as Kiro sniffed cautiously at a piece of alien fruit he had been offered. And I think he's starting to recognize us. Sarah smiled, her eyes lighting up. That's a good sign. We need to keep showing him that we're friends, not foes. Elena entered the med bay, carrying a small device. I've been thinking, she said, holding up the device. This is a portable translator. It's not perfect, but maybe we can use it to understand his vocalizations better. If we can mimic his sounds, we might be able to communicate more effectively. Karen looked skeptical. You think that will work? It's worth a shot, Elena replied, setting the device on a table. We need every advantage we can get. The team gathered around as Elena activated the translator. The device hummed to life, its screen displaying a series of waveforms. Let's start with something simple, Elena said. She made a soft, cooing sound, similar to one Kiro had made when he seemed calm. The device translated the sound into a series of clicks and whistles. Kiro's ears perked up, and he made a responding sound, softer and less aggressive than before. It's working, Ravi exclaimed. He's responding. Elena's heart soared with hope. Good boy, Kiro, she said, making the sound again. We're here to help you. Over the next few days, the team used the translator to mimic Kiro's vocalizations. Gradually, the cub began to relax in their presence. He even allowed Elena to stroke his fur without growling. One evening, as the team gathered for a meal, Kiro approached Elena, nudging her hand with his nose. She looked down, surprised. Well, would you look at that, Captain Collins said, a rare smile on his face. I think he likes you, Doc. Elena gently scratched behind Kiro's ears, feeling a sense of triumph. We're making progress, she said, her voice filled with determination. But we can't let our guard down. We still have a long way to go. The early morning air on Siler was heavy with mist as doctor. Sarah Timmons conducted her usual perimeter checks. She moved quietly through the dense foliage, her senses attuned to the subtle sounds of the jungle. Everything seemed normal until she spotted something unusual near the edge of the clearing. Elena, you might want to take a look at this, Sarah called through her communicator. Elena and Captain Collins hurried to Sarah's location. She pointed to a set of tracks leading away from the camp. Those aren't apex predator tracks, Elena said, examining the prints closely. These are boot prints, human. Captain Collins' expression hardened. Enemy scouts. They must have found us. Elena looked at Kiro, who was watching them with keen eyes. If they're scouting the area, they could be planning an attack. We need to prepare. Back at the base, Elena gathered the team. Listen up, everyone. We found evidence of enemy scouts nearby. We need to fortify our defenses and be ready for anything. Doctor. Karen White glanced nervously at Kiro. What about the apex predator pack? If they're looking for Kiro, we might have more than just human enemies to worry about. Exactly, Elena said. We need to communicate with the pack and let them know Kiro is safe. If we can gain their trust, they might even help us. Ravi, who had been studying Kiro's behavior patterns, nodded. He's been making certain vocalizations consistently. I think he's calling out to his pack. Elena turned to Captain Collins. We need to set up a perimeter and place some traps. The Marines should stay on high alert. We can't afford any surprises. Collins saluted. You got it, Doc. We'll be ready. As the team worked to secure the base, Elena and Ravi focused on using Kiro's vocalizations to communicate with the apex predator pack. They recorded his calls and played them through the translator, amplifying the sounds to reach further into the jungle. Sarah, standing watch with binoculars, spotted movement in the distance. "I think they're coming," she said, her voice tense. Elena, Ravi, and Karen gathered near the edge of the clearing, watching as the apex predator pack slowly approached. The Alpha, a massive apex predator with deep scars across its face, led the pack. The tension was palpable as they drew nearer, their eyes fixed on Kiro. "Stay calm," Elena whispered. "Let's show them we mean no harm." Kiro made a soft, reassuring sound, and the Alpha responded with a similar call. Elena took a step forward, holding her breath. She extended her hand, palm open, in a gesture of peace. The Alpha sniffed the air, its eyes narrowing. Slowly it stepped closer, until it was within reach of Elena. She remained still, her heart pounding, as the Alpha sniffed her hand. "It's okay," Elena said softly. "We're here to help." After what felt like an eternity, the Alpha let out a low, rumbling growl that seemed to resonate with approval. The rest of the pack relaxed slightly, their aggressive postures softening. Ravi exhaled in relief. "I think we're getting through to them." Elena nodded. "But we need to stay vigilant. This trust is fragile. One wrong move and we could lose everything." Captain Collins approached cautiously. "We've set up the traps and fortified our defenses. If the enemy makes a move, we'll be ready." "Good," Elena replied. "For now, let's focus on strengthening our bond with the apex predators. We need all the allies we can get." The next morning, the jungle was alive with the sounds of Xylar's wildlife. "Doctor." Elena Reyes stood at the edge of the clearing, watching the apex predator pack move cautiously around the perimeter of the camp. Kiro, now stronger and more alert, stayed close to her side. "All right, Team," Elena said, addressing the group gathered behind her. "Today we need to solidify our relationship with the apex predators. They're curious, but still wary. Let's show them we're not a threat." "Doctor." Sarah Timmons nodded. "I've been observing their behavior. The Alpha seems to be the key. If we can gain his trust, the rest will follow." "Agreed," Ravi said, adjusting his notes. "I've prepared some recordings of Kiro's calls. Maybe we can use them to communicate more effectively." Captain Collins, ever the pragmatic soldier, remained skeptical. "Just remember, these are wild predators. One wrong move, and we could be in serious trouble." Elena approached the Alpha cautiously, holding out a piece of food she knew the apex predators favored. "It's all right," she said softly. "We're friends." The Alpha's eyes, a piercing blue similar to Kiro's, watched her intently. Slowly it stepped forward, sniffing the air before taking the food from her hand. The other apex predators in the pack seemed to relax slightly, their posture less aggressive. "Good boy," Elena murmured, maintaining eye contact with the Alpha. "See, we mean no harm." Ravi played one of Kiro's recorded calls through the translator. The Alpha's ears perked up, and it responded with a similar sound. Kiro, standing beside Elena, echoed the call, creating a chorus of communication. "This is incredible," Sarah said, her voice filled with awe. "They're really trying to communicate with us." Elena felt a surge of hope. "We're making progress, but we need to be consistent. Let's keep engaging with them, showing them we're allies." Over the next few hours, the team took turns interacting with the apex predator pack. Dr. Karen White carefully tended to any minor injuries the pack members had, earning their cautious respect. Sarah and Ravi observed their behavior, noting patterns and responses. As the sun reached its zenith, the apex predators began to grow restless. The Alpha, sensing something, growled and looked towards the jungle. Kiro mirrored the behavior, a low rumble vibrating from his chest. "What's going on?" Captain Collins asked, his hand instinctively moving to his weapon. Elena frowned. "I don't know, but something's definitely got their attention." Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the jungle, followed by the sound of crashing branches. The team tensed, their eyes scanning the dense foliage. "Everyone stay alert," Collins ordered, his voice firm. "This could be the enemy." The apex predator pack formed a protective circle around the team, their hackles raised and teeth bared. The Alpha let out a series of sharp barks, and Kiro joined in, their calls blending into a powerful, intimidating sound. Elena's heart raced. "They're protecting us," she realized aloud. "They see us as part of their pack." A moment later, a group of enemy scouts emerged from the jungle, their weapons drawn. Captain Collins and his Marines immediately took defensive positions, ready to fight. Hold your fire, Elena shouted. Let's see if the apex predators can handle this. The Alpha, flanked by the pack, advanced on the scouts with a fierce growl. The enemy, clearly unprepared for such an aggressive display, hesitated. One of the scouts raised his weapon, but before he could fire, the Alpha lunged, knocking him to the ground. Chaos erupted as the apex predator pack attacked the scouts, their powerful bodies moving with lethal precision. The Marines provided cover, ensuring none of the scouts could escape. Within minutes, the skirmish was over. The scouts lay subdued, some injured but none fatally. The Alpha returned to Elena's side, his blue eyes meeting hers with an unmistakable sense of trust and mutual respect. Captain Collins lowered his weapon, looking at Elena with newfound admiration. Well, I'll be damned. They really did protect us. Elena nodded, her heart swelling with pride. We're part of their pack now. This is the beginning of something incredible. The captured enemy scouts were securely bound and placed under guard in a corner of the camp. As the team gathered to discuss their next steps, the tension in the air was palpable. The apex predator pack remained vigilant, patrolling the perimeter of the base with a sense of purpose. Captain Collins addressed the team first. We've managed to fend off a scouting party, but this is only the beginning. They'll send reinforcements, and we need to be ready. Doctor. Sarah Timmons nodded, her face serious. The apex predators are on high alert. They can sense the danger too. We need to work together with them to strengthen our defenses. Elena turned to Ravi. Do we have any more recordings of Kiro's calls that might help coordinate with the pack? Ravi checked his equipment. I've got a few more recordings we can use, but we'll need to be careful with how we deploy them. The apex predators respond to very specific sounds. Karen, who had been tending to the injured scouts, approached the group. One of the scouts mentioned that their main force isn't far behind. We don't have much time. Elena's mind raced as she considered their options. All right, we need to fortify the camp. Sarah, you and Ravi work on setting up additional barriers and traps with the Marines. Karen, continue to gather intel from the scouts and keep an eye on their condition. The team sprang into action. Sarah and Ravi coordinated with the Marines to reinforce the camp's defenses, using natural resources from the jungle to create barriers and traps. Elena focused on maintaining the fragile alliance with the apex predator pack. Elena approached the alpha apex predator, who watched her with calm, intelligent eyes. We need your help, she said softly, holding out her hand. We can protect each other. The alpha responded with a series of low growls and barks. Kiro, standing beside Elena, echoed the sounds. The pack seemed to understand, their stances relaxing slightly. Ravi joined Elena, holding up a small device. We've set up a series of sensors around the perimeter. If anything larger than a bird approaches, we'll know. Good, Elena replied, her voice determined. We need every advantage we can get. As night fell, the camp was a hive of activity. The Marines set up guard rotations, their weapons at the ready. Sarah and Ravi placed traps in strategic locations, using their knowledge of the terrain to create effective defenses. Captain Collins approached Elena, his expression grim. We've done what we can. Now it's just a waiting game. Elena nodded, feeling the weight of the situation. We have to trust that we're prepared. The apex predators are with us. That has to count for something. Hours passed in tense silence. The jungle seemed to hold its breath, the usual sounds of wildlife replaced by an eerie stillness. Elena and the team gathered around a central monitor, watching the sensor feeds intently. Suddenly, one of the monitors flashed red. Movement detected, Ravi announced, his voice steady. They're coming. The team sprang into action, taking their positions. The apex predator pack moved to the front lines, their eyes glowing in the dim light. Captain Collins addressed his Marines. Remember, hold the line. Work with the apex predators. We've got this. As the first signs of the enemy force emerged from the jungle, Elena felt a surge of adrenaline. She glanced at Kiro, who stood beside her, his body tense and ready. This is it, she whispered. Stay strong, Kiro. The enemy troops advanced, their weapons gleaming ominously in the moonlight. The apex predator pack let out a unified growl, a sound that seemed to reverberate through the entire camp. The battle was about to begin, and Elena knew that their survival depended on the strength of their alliance and their unwavering resolve. With a deep breath, she prepared for the fight ahead, knowing that the future of their mission and possibly the entire colony hung in the balance. The enemy troops emerged from the jungle in a tight formation, their numbers greater than expected. "Doctor," Elena Reyes could see the determination in their eyes, mirroring the resolve she felt in her own heart. This was it, the moment they had prepared for. "Hold your positions," Captain Collins barked, his voice cutting through the tense silence. The Marines took aim, ready to defend their ground. The apex predator pack, led by the imposing Alpha, stood at the front. Their growls grew louder, a clear warning to the advancing enemy. Kiro, now fully healed and fierce, was at Elena's side, his loyalty and strength evident. Elena took a deep breath and activated her communicator. "Team, remember the plan. Coordinate with the apex predators. We fight together." As the enemy drew closer, the first line of traps was triggered. Explosions rocked the jungle floor, sending debris flying and causing confusion among the enemy ranks. The apex predator pack seized the moment, launching themselves at the disoriented troops with terrifying speed and precision. Now Captain Collins shouted, and the Marines opened fire, their shots carefully aimed to avoid the apex predators. Elena watched as the battle unfolded. The apex predators were a force of nature, their movements swift and lethal. The Alpha led the charge, taking down enemy soldiers with a ferocity that left Elena in awe. Kiro followed his lead, his powerful jaws and sharp claws making quick work of any foe that crossed his path. "We need to keep pushing them back," Ravi called out, his voice barely audible over the din of battle. "Sarah, how are the barriers holding up?" Sarah glanced at the makeshift barriers they had erected. "So far, so good. They're slowing them down, but we need to stay vigilant." The enemy, though initially thrown into chaos, began to regroup. Their leader, a tall figure with a menacing presence, rallied his troops and directed their fire towards the Marines and the apex predators. "We're not out of this yet," Karen muttered, crouched behind cover and tending to a wounded Marine. "Keep your heads down and stay focused." Elena noticed a group of enemy soldiers trying to flank their position. "Captain Collins, they're moving to our left. We need to cut them off." Collins nodded and signaled a group of Marines. "You heard her. Let's move." As the Marines moved to intercept the flanking enemy, the Alpha apex predator let out a commanding roar. The pack split into two groups, one continuing the frontal assault while the other, led by Kiro, moved to support the Marines. The battle raged on, each side fighting with relentless determination. Elena found herself in the thick of it, her training and instincts guiding her actions. She fired her weapon, took cover, and communicated with her team, all while keeping an eye on Kiro and the apex predators. "Elena, over here," Sarah called, pointing to a cluster of enemy soldiers attempting to breach their defenses. "We need to hold this line." Elena rushed to Sarah's side, providing cover fire as the apex predator pack descended upon the enemy. The Alpha and Kiro worked in tandem, their coordination seamless and devastating. As the enemy's numbers dwindled, their leader shouted orders, trying to rally his remaining troops. But the combined strength of the human team and the apex predator pack was too much. The enemy began to retreat, their formation breaking as they fled back into the jungle. "We've got them on the run," Ravi cheered, his face alight with relief. "Don't let up." Elena felt a surge of hope. They were turning the tide. "Press forward. We can end this now." With renewed vigor, the team and the apex predators pushed the enemy back. The jungle echoed with the sounds of battle, but the tide had clearly turned. The enemy was retreating, their leader shouting for a full withdrawal. As the last of the enemy soldiers disappeared into the jungle, the team regrouped. The apex predator pack gathered around the Alpha, their bodies still tense, but their eyes reflecting a sense of victory. "We did it," Captain Collins said, his voice filled with pride. "We held the line." Elena looked at Kiro, who stood tall and proud beside her. "We couldn't have done it without you," she said softly, scratching behind his ears. Kiro rumbled in response, a sound that Elena chose to believe was a sign of gratitude. The first rays of dawn filtered through the dense jungle canopy, casting a warm, golden light over the camp. "Doctor." Elena Reyes stood on a rise, looking out over the clearing where they had fought so fiercely just hours before. The ground was still scarred from the battle, but the sense of calm that had settled over the area was a welcome change. Captain Collins approached her, his face tired but content. "We did it, Doc. We actually did it." Elena smiled, the weight of the past days beginning to lift. "We did. And we couldn't have done it without the apex predators." As if on cue, Kiro trotted over to Elena, nuzzling her hand. She scratched behind his ears, feeling a deep sense of connection with the young apex predator. "You were incredible out there," she said softly. Ravi and Sarah joined them, their expressions a mix of exhaustion and elation. "I still can't believe we managed to communicate with them," Ravi said, shaking his head in amazement. "They're truly remarkable creatures." Sarah nodded. "We've made history here. This alliance is unprecedented." Elena turned to the alpha apex predator, who was watching them from a distance, his eyes reflecting a quiet intelligence. "We need to solidify this relationship. We can't just be allies in battle, we need to find a way to coexist peacefully." Karen, who had been tending to the injured, walked over, wiping her hands on her uniform. "The scouts we captured confirmed that the enemy won't be back for a while. We have some breathing room." "That's good news," Collins said. "We should use this time to strengthen our defenses and build on the trust we've established with the apex predators." Elena nodded in agreement. "We need to understand their social structures, their needs, and how we can support each other. This is just the beginning." As the team set about their tasks, Elena approached the alpha apex predator once more. She held out her hand, palm open, in a gesture of peace. The alpha stepped forward, sniffing her hand before gently nuzzling it. "We're in this together," Elena said, looking into the alpha's eyes. "We'll protect each other." The alpha let out a soft growl, a sound that Elena chose to interpret as agreement. She turned to her team, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. "Let's start planning for the future. We have a lot of work to do." Over the next few days, the team worked tirelessly to strengthen their alliance with the apex predators. They observed the pack's behavior, learning about their social dynamics and how they communicated. Elena spent hours with Kiro and the alpha building a bridge of understanding. "We need to establish a routine," Ravi suggested during a strategy meeting. "Something that shows the apex predators were reliable and trustworthy." "Agreed," Sarah said. "We should share resources like food and medical supplies. It'll show them we're committed to this partnership." Elena looked around at her team, feeling a surge of pride. "Let's make this work. We're not just surviving, we're creating a new way of living together." As they implemented their plans, the bond between humans and apex predators grew stronger. The pack began to spend more time around the camp, their presence a comforting reminder of their newfound alliance. One evening, as the sun set over Siler, casting long shadows through the jungle, Elena sat with Kiro beside a small campfire. The rest of the team gathered around, sharing stories and laughter, the tension of the past days melting away. "We've come a long way," Captain Collins said, raising a cup in a toast. "To new beginnings." "To new beginnings," Elena echoed, smiling as she looked at her team and the apex predator pack. The future was uncertain, but for the first time since they arrived on Xylar, she felt a sense of hope and optimism.